The world's completely changing. People are no longer, young people, and I see this from my kids. I got 5 kids. So I see this from my kids. Nobody's really planning the one job, one career thing where, okay, we're going to start working at General Motors or Procter Gamble, and for the next 45 years, that's where we're going to work, and we're going to retire with a gold watch. Nobody is doing that. People are looking for, they have a view of their career, but they're looking for side hustles, ways to make money from home, ways to make money while traveling. And I'm not saying that people are lazy. They're actually hustling really hard. And where are all these jobs? Where are all these opportunities? Well, I had a chance to talk to Micha Kaufman, who's the founder and CEO of Fiverr.com. If you haven't checked out Fiverr.com, I would check it out. This is the place where all of those side hustles and careers are forming. There is so much opportunity. There are millions of jobs have been created from a company like Fiverr. So check out what, Micha Kaufman and I, and what's the role of AI in all this is amazing, because that literally could change your life. The combination of companies like Fiverr with you using AI. So check it out. I talked to Micha over this next episode.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
I'm glad you came on the podcast. I've long been a user of Fiverr. Maybe describe what Fiverr is, and I'd love to ask you how it started. This is such a great business. I'm jealous of the whole economy you created around it.
So basically, Fiverr is a platform that connects talent, and that talent could be individual talent or that could be agencies with businesses that need access to that talent. So basically, it's a matching service. And since talent is global and the demand for talent is global, we operate in 160 countries, and the majority of our transactions are cross-border, which is really interesting because it goes across cultures. It adds flavor, it adds nuances into work. The idea basically at the beginning came out of 2 realizations. One was that when you wanted to, and this was 2009, back then when you wanted to work or find a talented person, the process of doing that was almost as bad as dating.
And so at the time, though, in 2009, there were already companies like Freelancer.com, Elance, Scriptlance. So there were companies out there where it was a marketplace for finding freelancers, which I made use of extensively. I probably used all of them. Why did you think, okay, I'm going to be yet another player in this space?
So I've also used these platforms. I wasn't happy with it. One of the reasons was that I thought that a lot of what these platforms were trying to do is they were trying to replicate the way you hire people offline and just do the same things online, which to me was not really harnessing the power of software and the distribution of the internet to do something much better than you do offline. And this is where the idea of Fiverr came to be, which is instead of saying, keep a system where you come with a project and people bid on that project and you negotiate and you strike a deal. Instead of that, let's flip it. Let's say if you're talented and you know what you can offer, we just put it on a catalog. If we can create a SKU system to describe the world of services through verticals and categories and the services themselves, you can price that service as high or low as you want, and people can just go through this catalog, do a quick search, find whatever they need. They have the history, they have the portfolio of the person offering the service, they have reviews by previous customers. Click order and you're done. That compressed something that used to take anything between a week or 2 to a month into something that took 5 minutes. And this to me is the power of software. This is what we can create with it and what we can create with the right data, presentation, discovery system, matching algorithms. which is what we've done. So we've pioneered this approach of having a true marketplace, two-sided marketplace that connects talent with those who are seeking to hire talent for specific things.
What are some of the most common services now that people use Fiverr to hire talent for?
And as I've said, I think officially we passed 800 different categories of services, and all of these categories are very successful. Those who are irrelevant are no longer on the catalog. When you think about those services, you have services around things that have to do with programming, software development, graphic design, marketing, writing, video, and business or consulting, lately being a year and a half now, a lot of AI-related services, a ton.
I want to ask about that, but I'm curious in general about the rise of the gig economy over the past 15 years since you started. I remember I visited LinkedIn, I think it was in 2013, 2012. They basically said the gig economy accounted for far less than 1% of the world economy. And I'm wondering if now, because of companies like Fiverr, if that's no longer true, if now people doing gigs and making a full living at it without having to get like a full-time job, how much has that become a part of the world economy?
It about tripled, meaning it's about 3%.
Okay.
It's still early innings. When you think about the size of this economy, if you just take, so I've mentioned we operate in 800 different categories. So if you take those categories, not plumbers, electricians, dog walkers, just digital services, in the US, that amounts to about $400 billion in earnings by freelancers. If you take all of the platforms that are doing the online combined, maybe 3% out of that. So it's still in many ways like e-commerce back in 1995.
And what do you think is obviously everybody was afraid to use e-commerce in 1995. They didn't want to put their credit cards into this weird thing called the web. Like, what's going to change? How do you see the gig economy growing? And leaving aside AI for a second, because I want to explore the AI equation as well.
I think in many ways you said it. There is an intrinsic, I think, the hiring space is still very old-fashioned, right? It's still resumes, and it's still recruiters, and it's still the same journeys of interviews and peer interviews. It takes time. And for companies, for businesses to change the way they hire is very hard. Much like it was very hard back in 1995 to convince people to shop online. It's just habits. It's kicking in, and it takes time to replace the things that you're used to do with things that you're unsure of and give it a go. I know that Fiverr, we have customers for 160 countries in the world. Some of them are micro businesses, solopreneurs. Some of them are, the majority actually, of Fortune 500 companies use Fiverr. So there is more openness, but it's still not becoming a standard. Much like e-commerce started becoming a standard at some point. But it took e-commerce more than 2 decades to reach, 5% and then 10%. And as you do it, by the way, one of the things, maybe we're taking 3% of the overall market, but the market itself, we've helped grow massively. It was 15 years ago when we started, the market was maybe a third of what it is now. And the amount of people that were engaging in freelancing was less than half of now. And freelancing was something that you used to do in between jobs, not as a career. And today it's not just a career, it's also a lifestyle. And people are proud of doing it. So,
like, people could live anywhere. The idea of kind of the digital nomad,
exactly.
It kind of grew out of this freelance economy. You said something very interesting, though, which is that companies or maybe executives or CEOs out of habit have this old way of thinking about hiring and accomplishing tasks, and that you need people sitting at desks doing things to have a real so-called company.
So here's how I'm thinking about this. When you run a business, you have a good grasp of what is the core competence that you have as a business. If you're a software company that specializes in these highly sophisticated algorithms, then having algorithm experts is your core competency. But what about the rest? What about sales? What about marketing? What about design? What about product? In many cases, what you can do is you can tap into the most talented people in a way that gives you flexibility to scale it up or down as you need, depending on whatever your needs are in that same moment. So we have people that are full-timers. These people are usually very much focused on what we do as core competency. What is the core of what we do? On the periphery of what we do, at extending our team, if we have a certain design team, and sometimes we need help and we need to double it, but we need to double it just for a month. All of that we'll do flexibly. All of that we'll do through the platform, which makes a ton of sense. I made the analogy for cloud computing. And some people didn't like it because it was like I was comparing human beings with computers, which I wasn't. But
Who cares if you were?
Yeah,
People are so sensitive.
whatever.
Yeah.
Here's the analogy. Think about the move from hosted computers. When I started building companies 20 years ago, we hosted our servers at the office. We had a safe room,
Right.
and we had to buy them, and we had to maintain them, and we had to upgrade them, and we had to secure them, and we need to keep them up and running. And then came cloud computing, and cloud computing leveled the playing field, because if I'm a small startup, I can still have the computing power of the largest companies in the world. I'll just pay as I use. So if I use it, if I'm not successful, I'm not going to pay a lot. If I am, I will pay accordingly. But I don't need to maintain the servers. I don't need to upgrade them. I don't need to buy them. I don't need to teach them new things, whatever, they're being maintained. Think about that in the context of talent. Think about, the ability to tap into this cloud of talent that is always up to date, where you can find people that know all the new things. When AI started to become a thing, I mean, we were using AI for 5-6 years at least. But when ChatGPT came out and everybody was starting to talk about AI, it took us probably 3 to 4 weeks to have about 15 different categories of AI experts. Okay? So this is
Wow.
the speed in which you can respond. And businesses on the other end, you can tap into it. It's so easy. It's so friction free. That's the idea.
Take a quick break. If you like this episode, I'd really, really appreciate it. It means so much to me. Please share it with your friends and subscribe to the podcast. Email me at altucher@gmail.com and tell me why you subscribed. Thanks.
How did you first attract people to your site? Because again, there was some competition out there, and before someone uses your site, they don't really know the difference between all the sites. Like, how did you do the basic thing of getting that network effect working for you? Like, i.e., the more people on the site, the more valuable it becomes.
It's a great question, and one that I've been asked a lot by many people and people that are starting companies. So essentially, when you're trying to start a two-sided marketplace, you always are driven by one side and constrained by another. Okay? And you need to figure out what it is for you. I'll give you an example. I'll touch Fiverr, but I'll give you examples from other companies. If you're Uber, you're supply constrained.
So supply in the sense of drivers and cars?
Correct. Because if
Okay.
you don't have enough density of drivers, then the experience for customers is going to be terrible because they're going to wait 10 minutes.
Right.
Nobody wants to wait more than 2 minutes these days. So you need to have high density. So you have to have supply. You have to have that in abundance. If you look at their strategy early on, they were promising the moon to drivers just to get them on the platform, and they delivered. It's a great business. Think about Airbnb. Airbnb is host constraint, meaning they need to create, again, a lot of supply, a lot of choice in and also across to have enough saturation in many major cities in the world so that customers can use it.
Well, but this is interesting. They're constrained by supply, but supply exists in the world, right? So there are many houses with empty rooms. There are many cars with willing drivers.
So, and if you look at Amazon, or if you look at us as an example, we're supply driven, but we're demand constrained, meaning that essentially supply is almost free. You don't need to acquire supply. Supply wants to be there. It wants to join. And actually, in the almost 15 years that we're running Fiverr, we didn't do supply acquisition. So supply comes to us, and the constraint is more the demand. So bringing enough demand for that supply.
Right, because, and sorry for interrupting, I get curious every step of the way. So if someone's a freelancer, it's not like you needed to market to them. They're already on, let's say, freelance.com, Scriptlance, Elance. They're just going to put their information on another platform, any platform that exists. They're just going to put their information on because why not? Doesn't cost them anything.
When we started, it was less about having other platforms. It was more about us versus either marketing yourself locally, which was the most, and by the way, still is the most common way freelancers market themselves. So in their physical proximity, and it's word of mouth. It's just having previous customers recommend you to others. And websites, just creating online presence. But here's the thing. The number one need of a freelancer is to get opportunities, right? But it's also the part in their business that is just cost. Meaning, if you start as a freelancer and you have 0 customers, what you need to do is you need to get customers. How do you do it? You start going out and marketing yourself. You either put marketing dollars or you just spend man hours in just meeting with potential clients, blah, 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 whatever. This is super costly. And by the way, most freelancers hate that part of their job because they might be a super talented graphic designer. That doesn't mean that they like to do sales. That doesn't mean that they like to do accounting. That doesn't mean that they like to do legal stuff of signing contracts with customers and writing documents. So spending a ton of their time on this. For them, we were a distribution network. What we promised was to say, if you think about the Maslow pyramid of needs of a freelancer, the very bottom of it is access to opportunities, okay? But then there's other layers. Once I get the opportunities, can I simplify a lot of the drudgeries that I hate dealing, which I've mentioned, accounting, contracting, negotiation, chasing the customers to get paid at the end, figuring out which communication means we should use, where do we store files, whatever. So we took care of all of this for them. For talent, you need to sign up. It's free. Set up an account, decide what you want to offer. We'll do the rest for you. That was it. That was the promise. And so that allowed us to create a very meaningful partnership with them because we were taking all the things they hated doing and creating a stream of income, a stream of customers.
How did they even know about you? Like, how did they even know you existed?
So when we started, I didn't even incorporate a company because I was tired from setting up companies, bank accounts, whatever, before we didn't have anything. And I said, no, this time I'm flipping it. I'll hack a product, I'll put it online, I'll put a lot of energy in getting it right, having a business model from day one, having virality and stickiness built into the product. And it would either grow, succeed grassroots, or it would fail and will pivot or close or move to something else. That was kind of the idea. And so I didn't get any venture funding. It was all my money. And I didn't spend, I think for the first 4 or 5 years, we didn't spend a dime on marketing. So we were lucky enough to set up the site in a way that made it super sticky and super viral. Because the initial business model, which was really the go-to-market strategy, was to focus on microservices for micro businesses. And the tagline for it was the things people do for $5.
It's great.
Intriguing, right? It was
Yeah, because your first thought as a customer of it is, oh, everything is $5.
exactly, which it was for a while. But the way people join it was even smarter. Because if you looked at the website 15 years ago, it was just a list of statements that that started with, I will, then something for $5. That was the syntax. And the way I set it up is that there was in that homepage, you saw a list of things that people offer for $5. Above that, you had a text box with, I will blank for $5, submit. And it was just, people couldn't resist it. So they clicked on it. Once they clicked on it, it took them to the second step of this form, which took 2 more minutes. And they were in. This created this incredibly viral product that started gaining momentum super, super fast. And at the time, there were the equivalents of today's TikTok and Instagram, whatever. And this went super, super viral. And it started having transaction on day one. And as it was starting to grow, we started building the SKUs of the marketplace. And, we started with just 5 categories of services. And it was super naive. From that point, we started, extending the catalog, building more categories, understanding how people were using it. It was incredible. It was a crazy ride.
I mean, it must be such a pleasure to see something like that grow virally. And how did customers, like the ones purchasing, services and talent, how did they find out about the site?
Both sides of the equation were extremely vocal. The ones who were offering the services were just super proud of it. It was almost half funny. It was just, you wouldn't believe what I'm doing. And they were just talking about this, which attracted many other people to either offer or buy. And people that bought things were so proud of it by saying, oh my God, look at what I've just purchased for $5. You have to go there. You'll be blown away. People used to spend, on average, at the beginning, 25 minutes on the site every session. It was just, people were just so curious. It was like a rabbit hole of like, how deep can I go into people's imagination of what they can do for $5? Breaking the mold of $5 was one of the most complex things I've ever done as an entrepreneur. It was really hard.
Yeah, because then you have to get into the realm of negotiation and specs and staging, results and
Which,
so on.
by the way, we didn't. Meaning we extended it, but we still had the same market-based model where the providers, the talent, the sellers can set their price as they like. Mm-hmm. And you as a customer can opt into it or just pick someone else. So leaving it to the forces of the marketplace. And the reality was that in contrast to how most people thought about this, people thought that this would be a race to the bottom. Because essentially there's always someone who's going to come in and maybe offer something for a lower price. The reality was that the more successful you were on the platform, you had more demand. When you have more demand, what do? You increase prices because your capacity is limited. So you increase prices because you're famous, everybody knows you on the platform, your profile is extremely successful, you have enough reviews, and it's easy. And it created exactly the opposite trend that everybody was expecting to happen.
AI is changing this, obviously, on both sides of the equation, right? People are offering AI services, but also AI is perhaps taking jobs. Like
my take on this is, if AI is going to completely replace us, I have bigger problems than Fiverr, okay? The job economy in general is going to be in shambles. And I'm thinking of younger generations that need to figure out what to study. One of the hardest things right now is actually figuring out what to do with yourself. Because whatever you're going to learn could be obsolete by the time you finish your degree. And so everything is changing. That said, AI is going to replace some types of jobs, some types of services, That's perfectly fine. This is what technology does. When it is smarter and sometimes more creative or definitely more efficient than a human being, probably human beings shouldn't do it. But the reality is that it's generating so many new jobs that didn't exist 5 minutes ago.
Like what?
Anything that has to do with the technology itself. So if you think about the AI, you think about everything that has to do with the technology around AI. It's either the models, the training, the applications that are being built with AI. It's about voice synthesis in AI. It's about AI consulting for companies on how to integrate and build it better. It's about the usage of AI bots. It's about AI art. Here's the thing about AI. AI creates, for me, a new baseline because all of us have access to AI, so all of us can use AI, which means that this is the new, it's leveling the playing field. But it's not giving superpowers to any one of us. We have equal powers because we have access to AI. How do we create this advantage over others? It's usually by human creativity and ingenuity. And sometimes it's just about how you use AI. But the fact that a more professional have more experience in taking AI to whole new levels that you cannot, or I can mix a number of technologies in a way that produces something that is breathtaking. This is my advantage. So sometimes it's about the way you use it. AI is a tool. And for as long as human beings are the subject, meaning we consume whatever is being built by AI, and this would change over time because over time you'll have AI building things for AI itself. But in that case, we're out of the equation anyway. For as long as we're the consumer, we're needed.
So like you mentioned how like as soon as like ChatGPT was out there, suddenly there was like 15 new types of services that people were offering. What were some of the ways that suddenly people who didn't know anything about AI maybe a year earlier were suddenly making a living in the freelance economy using AI?
Here's the great thing about, and we talked about the analogy of cloud computing and how those nodes in the network upgrade themselves over time. This is what's great about talented people and specifically freelancers who live in a very dynamic, vibrant, agile, fast-moving. They're the earliest adopters, Whatever there's out there, they're going to try months ahead of you, which gives them a lead time to master in specific areas. So while you were, figuring out what ChatGPT is, they were already prompt experts. They've already accumulated hundreds, thousands of hours of checking out every possible technology that is out there, trying to figure out what is the best for each task and understanding how to command these technologies to yield the best results. If you want to spend the same amount of time mastering it, congratulations, do it. It's fine. Or hire one of these people because they've done it for you and they can just get you the best results. It's all about results. That's the bottom line. The technology itself, people fall in love with this idea or are very afraid of this idea, but this is just an idea. The question is, what do we human beings are doing with these tools? And those who are going to be the most creative, the most professional, take time to master these tools are going to be ahead of us. And you can connect to these people because they're there.
Let's take a specific profession or service like logo design.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who was a logo designer on Fiverr, let's say a restaurant or a record label or whatever would say, hey, can you make me a logo? Sure. Cost you X a number of dollars. And they'd spend a week, they'd hand over a logo. Now, how has it changed? They could use AI now to make 50 logos a day. How has it changed the lives of the freelancers? But also B, what are some other pure AI related jobs that people now are making money on? How has it helped the original freelancers, made their lives easier?
Yeah. So let's take the logo design as an example. I don't know if you've tried to create a logo with AI. It's not that simple. Sure, it spits out all kinds of things, but there's not a lot of judgment behind it. AI is not a human being. They don't know how a certain thing that they spit to your screen is going to be perceived by human beings. If you ask AI, what's a great color for a logo? It would probably answer, it's blue. Why? Because people relate to blue and it's a great color, but the Coca-Cola brand is red. Sometimes it spits out things that when human beings look at it, it looks like, the symbol of Satan. AI cannot see it. They cannot perceive whatever it's spitting out. Plus, it's very hard to edit whatever you design with AI. I mean, it's very hard to just say, oh, no, I just wanted to have rounded corners and just replace the color. It spits something completely different for you. If anything, I think that this is kind of an ideation tool. And I know that our sellers are using it extensively, not necessarily to produce the final product, but to ideate, to create, to put together ideas. And then if they feel that there's something in the right direction, they would bring their experience, whatever they know about the field of logo design, whatever they know on how people react to certain symbols, colors, typography, and they would craft this thing together. So for them, it's a tool, but that can also be a tool for customers. Sure, play with AI, ideate, try to create something. If it's good enough, awesome. Take it, use it. I found it to be very, very hard to get to the final result. And again, think about what I said earlier, which is as long as human beings are the consumers of the output, then the way human beings respond to something remains super important, which is what AI lacks at this point. It doesn't have the feedback loop of a human being without a human being.
So it might make the logo designer's job easier then. Like,
Right.
I can generate 50 ideas. Oh, I like this one. I'm going to enhance it and improve it. And 2/3 of the work are done for me. Here's the first draft of the logo. But it hasn't taken their jobs.
Correct.
Like logo designers haven't disappeared yet.
Correct.
I mean, it might happen in the future, but not yet.
And maybe, and again, I think if I think about the amount of jobs that sustain across generations, from my grandparents to my parents to me to my kids, very few. The more rapid technology evolves, the cycles shrink. So this idea that certain types of professions or jobs are going to disappear is something that we should get comfortable with.
Right. And like you say, though, it's getting faster. And by the way, we were talking about Yuval Harari earlier.
Right.
Yuval Harari, when I had a conversation like this with Yuval, where he said AI might divide the world into the haves who have AI and the have-nots. And my comment to him was, but AI might, just like the internet, it's going to develop so fast, there won't be time for the haves to separate themselves from the have-nots. Everyone's just going to get it. And that's sort of what happened. But to your point about these cycles getting faster, okay, maybe it took 30 years before typewriters to be replaced by computers, 15, 20 years before horses to be replaced by cars in the 1910s. And the people did lose their jobs, but maybe AI, but then they found new jobs. I don't know how, we never asked the question, where did the people who make, horse carriages, where did they find jobs later? No one really asked it. I have no idea. They didn't all move to Detroit and work on cars, but it might happen so fast with AI that do you ever get worried that there's just going to be a bunch of people with no work because AI is doing it all? Like, where are people going to go?
I've mentioned this dilemma of figuring out what to do. What are younger generations going to do with themselves? What should they choose as a profession? And I think this is becoming more fluid, which is just making higher education less and less relevant. Because it's spending 3-4 years in an institute that teaches you things that were relevant 5 years ago doesn't work anymore. You need to store less information in your head, and more information is accessible for you in a click of a button. It's not just indexed for you, it's curated for you. meaning you don't look at links and click on a bunch and figure out what's right. You get it already curated and digested for you, which is very dangerous if it's misused, but it makes it very easy for people to learn and to master new areas. We've seen that in the past 10, 15 years. Look, when my dad, who's a semiconductor executive, built his career, I think he probably had maybe 4 or 5 positions in his entire career of tens of years, of decades. And these days, the average tenure in high tech is 1.8 years, meaning that less than 2 years, people switch to something. And it's not just necessarily trying to get a higher salary, it's because they're bored or they want to try new things, which is, by the way, why so many people are being attracted to freelancing, because that allows you to reinvent yourself every month, right? And try new things and see if it sticks. So I think that you're seeing that compression of cycles even right now. And this was true even before AI. This is just, the pace of things is accelerating. And I think AI is just going to accelerate this further. Unfortunately, I don't think we're imaginative enough to know which professions are going to be the hottest in 5 or 10 years from now. But definitely it will require people to be more agile, responsive to changes, and find new areas of passion and expertise many, many times in their lifetime.
Like, how do you see the gig economy evolving? What should people be looking at? What kind of, if I want to be a freelancer and I want to use AI, what should I learn? What should I be thinking about?
Depending on which areas that AI covers are interesting for you. That could be writing, that could be design, that could be videography, that could be music.
Do you think is prompt, like coming up with prompts, I feel like that was a job for a brief moment, maybe not as much now?
Yeah, it still is, by the way. And again, remember what I said before, which is everybody has access to AI, which makes all of us stand on the same starting line. We don't have any advantage. The only advantage is the experience of using these tools and remixing these tools. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is how people connect different technologies together to produce new things, to produce breathtaking imagery or video or sound or voices. And this takes time. It's going through, there's, AI exploded into our lives. There's hundreds and hundreds of different companies that provide either models or applications that you can use. Just going through these options take a ton of time. But if you want to understand which tool is the best for every specific task, this is the job that you need to do. That takes time. Then it's mastering those tools, understanding how to prompt them well, how to sometimes manipulate them because they don't necessarily respond in the way that you would anticipate, but there's tricks on making them do that. Then it's connecting those different tools together to get very special results. The most incredible things that were done with the AI are just incredibly talented people behind it that knew how to make technology at the end churn out something that would blow all of our minds.
What do you see as one of the potential problems in the economy from AI? Like, what, if any?
Well, there's dystopic view that some have that this would completely replace the need for human beings. It would start with labor, meaning there's not going to be any jobs for anyone, which means lack of income. But then if AI evolves into a self-correcting mechanism, self-feeding mechanism, where it doesn't need input from us, then it's a different entity that in size would become so much larger than the entire human race, which would make us as the minority here in terms of brain power, in terms of resources and so forth. I think that this is I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't think it's very likely. that this would happen anytime soon. And if we put the right guardrails on it, I don't think it's going to evolve into it. I do feel that, and you've asked many smart questions about this, which is, okay, great. So what do we do now? What are the next professions? If some professions are getting displaced, what are the new ones? What should people learn? What should people major in? I think that this is, when I look at people in general, and these could be full-timers, not just freelancers. And this, not necessarily only super young people, but also people that have been around for years in building a career. It's a scary moment. If you're a software developer, would I have a job in 5 years from now?
I think that is scary. I think people are worried about that. And look, I see it among musicians. I spoke recently at a conference in Hollywood in the entertainment industry. Movie studios are worried that instead of needing movie studios to spend $40 million to make a movie, anybody can make a movie. And you won't even need actors because the AI will make the actors. So what do you say for people who kind of like opt on the side of pessimism more than optimism here?
I'm generally a techno-optimist because I've seen over my lifetime, if I was looking also generations back, how technology on a net basis made human beings' lives better. I think that this would be the case here. We're just confused because things are happening very, very fast. And there's a lot of information that nobody knows if it's true or untrue about how far are we from AGI and from superintelligence. Some say we're decades away. Some say we're there already. I think this unknown factor creates a lot of anxiety. As I've said, for as long as human beings are the center of this universe, and for as long as this needs to serve us and not the other way around, we're going to be well. It's just hard to imagine how jobs are going to change, our lives are going to change, but it's serving us, which means that we were essential in this feedback loop because we're consuming. It needs to serve us, and it needs us in the equation to continue creating, calibrating, inventing, imagining things for it to be better for us. So I don't think it's likely that we're going to be left out of that equation.
And as the freelancing landscape changes and evolves because of AI, what do you think's next for Fiverr? Like, how does Fiverr evolve along with AI?
So we're using AI extensively on our product to make it better, right? The things that we can do for the benefit of our community, and our community is both the freelancer and the customers. Whatever we can remove in terms of friction, repetitive work, things that are unnecessary, making the product simpler, more efficient, more accurate, we do. The very basic function of Fiverr is to do matching between talent and customers. That has been tremendously influenced by AI in the past 5 or 6 years. We used to call AI ML or machine learning. That's kind of the earlier incarnations of AI. And now using the most sophisticated linguistical and mathematical tools to make matching better. So this is one. The other is just,
as soon as I log into the site, for instance, I'm already seeing things that your AI thinks is probably related to what I might want.
Correct. And it gets better and better over time. This is something we've been doing for many, many years. In recent years, we've been giving this superpower of doing this much more efficient than we have before. Then it's about giving tools to our customers, meaning they don't need to go out and experiment with AI or figure out what's the best AI for whatever. There is a Copilot agent on Fiverr that helps you through the process of ideation, figuring out what you need, helping you write a project spec, send that project spec to the right talent, have them contact you, and so forth. So we're using this technology to make everything simpler and more efficient. We're trying to make these tools accessible for our entire community so that they can benefit from them instead of trying to go through tens of hundreds of different applications and tools just to figure out what's the best tool for something.
Now, let me ask you this. Fiverr is a public company in the US. I think the symbol's FVRR. Is it worth it going public? Like, was that a drag?
No, not at all. This was actually one of the most intellectually interesting things I've done as an entrepreneur and as a CEO. And it's one that forces you to develop a discipline of running a business in a way that private companies do not have. And sometimes it imposes some constraints over you. And in many cases, it just makes the organization so much more healthy and efficient. And so as we were gearing up to going public, I decided that as an exercise, about a year and a half ahead of the IPO, I started doing whatever public companies do, which is having the right cadence of quarterly earnings, the board and committees that come with it, and the infrastructure that I needed within management, legal, finance, whatever it is. And that created incredible discipline in the organization. So for me, this was great. And then at the beginning, when you are a young public company, certainly in a space where you're pioneering, you invest a lot of time in just telling the story and having people understand what is it all about, because it's a new space. It's not a space that is saturated and you're just another company. And so you do that, and that sharpens your storytelling in a great way. And then it's about building confidence, because you're a young public company and you need to create, rapport and confidence with your shareholders. These are all very teaching things. I'm not going to say that it's always easy or great, but it's not always easy or great being a private company as well. Ahead of the IPO, I did a town hall with the team, and I told them that we were going public, and I wanted to educate them about the process a little bit. I took graphs of, the Magnificent Seven or Fortune 500 companies. And I took graphs where you watch a graph and it's hectic. It's all over the place. It's going up and down and it's hiking, and then it's going to, and I've asked the team, which company is it? And they would try to guess. And I said, okay, this is whatever. This is Microsoft. And it would say, oh, this is impossible, that this is all over the place. And you said, yes, but this is 1 year. Let's zoom out. Let's do 5. Let's do 10 years. Let's do 20 years. And those bumps up and down, you don't see them. They become a line. They just become
That's a good exercise.
A straight line all the way, and this is kind of the summary of running a public company. And sometimes you're super lucky and it's always sunshine, whatever. I don't know a company that didn't go through a tough cycle where, as long as you're still interested in playing a long game, then you're fine. If you're done, or if you're in it for a short ride, you're going to be miserable as a public company CEO or working for a public company. It's very, very tough.
Well, Micha Kaufman, founder, CEO of Fiverr.com. Again, I'm a fan of the site, and I really loved the story about how it went viral and your thoughts on AI and the gig economy. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's really an honor to have you.
Thanks, James. Thank you so much for having me.